Hello and welcome to This Artworks, Lichfield Radio's weekly podcast on arts and culture. And this week I'm absolutely delighted to welcome into the studio veteran broadcaster and prize-winning broadcaster Mike Owen.
Good. Oh, hello.
Hello. How lovely to see you.
It's lovely to be here in your technological cupboard here. It's marvellous. I like it. It's brilliant.
I think technological cupboard is a wonderful way to describe it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a word used before by John Cleese when he came into my studio. I think he used it every studio goes and say, "Thank you for inviting me to your technological cupboard." So I really cheated there. It was his line, really.
Well, it's still a blooming fabulous line. And obviously we're not in a cupboard. Our studio is vast.
Oh, no, it's vast. It's vast. There's 28 people in here. It's marvellous. Yeah.
So that leads us in nicely to your radio broadcasting career. When did you start in radio?
Well, I did my first broadcast when I was 13 from Czechoslovakia. I was on a school, it wasn't a school, it's like an individual exchange to Czechoslovakia, which was then a communist country. It was very interesting. Yeah. I was 13, it was very interesting. And I was on Radio Prague. My dad recorded it on my reel-to-reel. I mean, I was a bit of a geek then, so I had a reel-to-reel recorder when, there weren't many about. And he recorded it. And when I got back home, I listened to it. And I kept getting things from Radio Prague after that, but nonetheless, I thought, this is all right, I could do this. And that was the kind of, that was the thing.
The beginnings of it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I was a teenager, radio was like life.
Yeah,
radio was where you got, because we didn't have access to free music back then. So radio was where I got all of my information about the world. Did you feel like that about radio?
Well, I think so. I mean, but there was the BBC, that was kind of, and it was the sort of comedy shows, the Navy Lark, all the ones that went out on a Sunday that kind of engaged me. That I was Archie Andrews, what a ventriloquist on radio. I mean, how daft does that get? But Mr. Bruff. Anyway, yeah, there were all those particularly ones on Sunday. The Navy Lark, some great people in it. I loved all that stuff and their music. And I used to listen to Luxembourg. I used to and whatever. And I once told a story to David Jacobs. You may remember David Jacobs.
I remember David Jacobs
seriously veteran broadcaster, a dead broadcaster now. But I produced an event that he was in. And I said to him, David, I used to record your show because he used to do the Top of the Pop show. I think they called it the Top of the Pick of the Pops.
Yes.
Before Alan Freeman. And I used to record it. And I found with my tape recorder that I could record the whole show. Oh, marvellous, this is fantastic. Oh, wonderful. And I said, then I learned that I could actually take your voice off it. Oh. So when I played to my friends, I could have the whole chart without you in it. And he went, well, I think that's he wasn't pleased, and I thought I shouldn't have told him that story. But that was the kind of interest in music, and I could play it to my friends. They couldn't afford to buy, chart stuff, and I had this Elizabethan tape recorder. It wasn't actually Elizabethan, incidentally, but it was called an Elizabethan. So that was that. Yeah, music. That's really good. Really played in an important part of my interest in radio.
So music is important to you?
Oh yeah. I've just had somebody cataloguing my vinyl.
Ooh,
I have about just short of 2,000 albums and about 800 or 900 singles. I've got all the Beach Boys singles, which I didn't realise. There was a lot of stuff in there I didn't realise. But it's mostly 70s, 80s, up to the 90s, till they stopped producing vinyl. Well, of course, they do now. It's
fashionable again, absolutely.
Yeah. So I've got it all catalogued and printed out and sitting there.
So after your first experiences on Radio Prague, where did you go from there?
Well, I went back to school, university. I applied to the BBC the first chance I got. And the guy said, he went to university, these kind of milk rounds, and he said, well, we've got 4 places. And then he said, but I don't think you should bother. I mean, I thought, well, that's interesting, because they were all going to go for people from Oxbridge anyway, so they were all signed up probably, and that was all they did. And I thought, oh, well, there we are. And so I went to Nottingham. I was in Reading. I went to Nottingham University to do a postgrad. An educational postgrad, teaching postgrad. And I started teaching drama, and almost immediately, and I was trying to think, how did it happen? I met a lady called Pat Silburn, who was then working at BBC Radio Nottingham, and also at Nottingham Playhouse. She was like a reader for whatever. Yes. She was great, and she said, "Oh, we're doing plays at the Playhouse. Why don't we doing a program that goes out every evening? Would you like to be involved?" And I said, "Try and stop me." And that's how I started on this plays at the Playhouse. And then it was Richard Eyre, now Sir Richard Eyre, a great knight of the theatre, who was just only plain Richard Eyre, and his wife that ran the Theatre and Education Company, who's done, wonderful things subsequent to that. To her sort of education. So they were doing things and I was interviewing them. So that was it was fantastic. And I'm really grateful to Pat Silver and those people, because it gave me a real into, interviewing Richard Eyre. He was like a kind of, a genius of the theatre. Yeah. And funny enough, Jonathan Price. Jonathan Price was in the rep company. And I remember talking to him and thinking, well, he's an interesting man. I'm sure he hasn't said to me, that Mike Owen, he's an interesting person. But, they were Trevor Griffiths, the playwright Trevor Griffith. He was around and about. Well, I remember doing this piece with him, thinking, oh, he's interesting. And the Comedians, they did the first version of the Comedians, which was that, and Jonathan Price did. It was amazing. And so it was kind of, doing stuff around there was fantastic. Really.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah. There's a sort of almost first toe in the water as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
So where did you go after?
Well, I was teaching. I was teaching drama and teaching other stuff in secondary school, and then I got a full-time attachment to the BBC to do education programming, because that is teacher education. You've got to do education. That must be what you know. And I did, and then it was about 18 months altogether, and I did 13 series. Primarily aimed at schools, but not exclusively. Some drama, some poetry, but it really was. It was aimed at kids, really, and that was again, fantastic learning curve.
Isn't it interesting? The way you've described it so far is that you've almost been in the right place at the right time. There's something about your character, do you think, that makes people think, yes, he can do it?
I don't know, possibly. But then, if an opportunity arises, you have two options. Either go, I can't do it, or shall I go for it?
Absolutely,
Then so that directly leads into my next thing after doing these largely education things. And I did some pop music programs as well. I remember I interviewed Slade, and they were hugely big at the time. They were like massive. They had some awful film out or whatever. And that was, it was exciting. I was kind of, and then we opened the radio station at midnight to do a thing we called the Moonlight Mile. I can't remember the title. And we did sort of shows. We opened the radio station, which was shut down, and did these really rather wacky things with nobody who was listening to, because we thought the station manager would be listening to this stuff. And that was kind of. That was, again, it was kind of different. And
it's kind of avant-garde, that idea, isn't it?
Was. Yeah. And Trevor Dan was in it, who was at Radio Nottingham, because eventually became programme controller of Radio 1 and head of BBC Music Entertainment. So he did quite well, really. It's my best man, as it happens. But,
very lovely.
So it was that was really, again, great. And then what do you do then? So I got back to school. And then commercial radio started, which I was kind of interested in. And then this advert, which I saw, I think it was in The Guardian. God, that sounds a bit posh for commercial radio, doesn't it? Which said, a producer of meaningful speech is required.
I see.
Which meant the rest of the speech on commercial radio was meaningless.
Yeah.
That's the way I looked at it. Kim Philby, the spy, he was the producer of Meaningful Speech at the BBC.
No way.
Yeah, it was called Producer of Meaningful Speech. It didn't. So I just remember that as a useless piece of information.
So you met him?
No.
Ah.
I think, no, he was spying by then. No, he was locked up. No, he was in Russia. He was hiding behind the gulags and went, no, he'd not gone. And so I went to commercial radio, and I remember the chief engineer saying to me, they're all crooks, I said, well, they seem very nice people, which they were perfectly. So then the job was to work with Ed Doolan, who was kind of, a doyen in many ways.
Absolutely.
Of BBC local radio, and to be his producer. Which he didn't want. He didn't want me. And I got there first week. Right, I'm set up this week. I've got all my people, and he worked he produced himself. He worked a very safe kind of process. Monday I'll do this, and Tuesday I do social, and Wednesday I'll do women's health or whatever.
Yeah.
Set people. And I thought, no, it's too set. I want to break that up. Anyway, he said that it's yours next week. No, I didn't work in Birmingham. I knew nobody. And here I've got to set up a week's live show. We did 2 shows. We did a kind of, it became a magazine show, and then in the evening a phone-in. And I didn't know anybody.
Gosh.
So he really set me up there.
Yeah.
I have had this conversation subsequent to that before he died. But I did it, and I thought, well, you can do this, because I hadn't done anything like that, setting up a live show. But somehow, I can't even remember how I did it, by getting in the crack of dawn and still being there at, 9 o'clock at night or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had a big bust up, he and I. And after that, we were the greatest of friends. He was,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure he appreciated what I know he did. He said so subsequently that it changed some of his. He played it safe, and it changed what he did, and he became much more adventurous, and it was all the better for it. Really.
Isn't it interesting? It's that avant-garde sort of thread of programming that you brought to it.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was. It wasn't so safe, and you could throw in all sorts of people that might say the wrong thing or the right thing.
Yeah.
But then he lived up to that. He loved a bit of confrontation and whatever, and just taking a little bit of a risk, which I think, and it was enormously successful. The figures were just amazing, really.
So are we talking about the sort of the 70s and 80s here?
So 78, I joined BRMB, and then eventually Ed left, change of management, whatever, he left. And then I had a kind of slightly different brief in which I, still as the sort of producer producing speech stuff, to a kind of sequence of a sort of short form format. The guy, Bob Hopton's name was, he was he's a well-known BBC staffing guy, and every 20 minutes he wanted a little bit of speech, different, throughout the day.
Right.
He called it a rolling format. And it was like, well, and you're producing it. Oh, right, okay, here's another challenge. So I had to devise, we did a theatre bit, like 3-minute spots, perhaps 4. We did theatre. We didn't do sport because that was the land of Tony Butler, the mad Tony Butler. But we did everything. We did, any sort of social stuff that was going. We did those kind of series, and then I thought, there's a lot of publishing going on, and Birmingham at that time, you had Central ATV, you had Pebble Mill, and everybody came to Birmingham.
Yeah.
So you weren't short of, famous people. And we'll take them in, let's get them in. People liked that, enjoyed that. So I would say to somebody, you are the author, the kind of standard author. Look, you come to us and I'll do 13 weeks worth of work for you. You think, what, hey? And they used to come and I would record 13 snippets of something in their book.
Oh, interesting.
And we would then edit it up.
Yeah.
And out it rolled, and it rolled through the night. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, there'd be this piece with some author or whatever. And we got up to, amazing number of things. I thought, how did I manage to do that? Well, sort of rock and roll. And, it was, in fact, I got a Publishers Award, Promotion Award, the Pulitzer Award, which was George Orwell's original agent for the promotion of books in the UK.
Did you?
I had almost forgotten that.
Because it's a precursor of what publishers do now, isn't it? Putting little spoilers, little tasters of a work out.
Yeah.
But you were doing it before that became, before the internet, when things were being done.
Yeah. So I would, whoever was on the author's list, if they were bringing them up to Birmingham, do a bit of Pebble Mill or ATV or whatever, come in and we'll talk to them, and they'll have a wonderful time, and the publicity for the book is enormous. So I think that's why.
Now, when you were at BRMB, weren't you involved in one of the biggest broadcasting coups, if you like, in terms of listener numbers that has ever happened?
Yeah. Well, Two Strangers. You mean Two Strangers?
Yeah.
Well, it is. I mean, it was. You think about it now, because that format is. It's on television all the time, isn't it? Two strangers marrying somebody they didn't know.
Married at First Sight, absolutely.
Well,
huge show.
We actually, after that, this radio station decided to do it. And they said to me, because I was by then working as Mike Owen Media, although I did all their PR and all their community stuff, for goodness knows what. And they said, will you do the promotion for us? And I remember thinking, no, it sounds a bit tacky, doesn't it? I don't think I really want, but I didn't really have much choice, really. So they dropped it once and came back. So I said, okay, well, we'll go with it. And just did not expect the response, because it was the kind of first in-your-face reality shocking thing that had ever been done. Yeah. So I was constantly getting calls like at 4 o'clock in the morning from American radio stations and Indian, all India broadcasting, because they thought it was highly amusing that what are people getting worked up about? This is just an arranged marriage. Yes. Exactly. It was perfect. My mother-in-law was shocked. She wouldn't speak to me for weeks, but I couldn't. And it built and built and built till we got to the wedding. We were monstered at the actual wedding itself. They were, doing stuff on ITN, for God's sake. I was on ITN justifying this sort of thing. Arguing with the Bishop of Birmingham. He was a very nice man. I didn't really want to argue with him. We were front page. I've got a book of cuttings. The one event is like this thick. It took a long time to
weren't you attracting figure numbers like 100 million?
Yeah, well, it was, the biggest ever. It had a really huge impact. And it was, whether tacky or not, it certainly was good for sales.
No, you were a trailblazer, because we've now got the show Married at First Sight, which has enormous viewer numbers and is now on season 10 or something like that. It's exactly the same premise, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's just now on TV show.
We tried to sell it to
really?
David Briggs, who was Celador, the millionaire people, and we went along and said, "This is our idea. We'll take it. We can make it televisual. We know how it works." A guy called Howard Bradley and I. And they went, nah, it'll never work. And you think, well, oh, right, okay. Well, they were wrong. But, so we did put it as a proposal. But there we are, we didn't do it. So.
And I think you've also worked with Capital Radio as well?
Yes, because Capital took over BRMB. So subsequent to that, then... as a soulless agent, as it were. Then Capital started the parties in the park in Birmingham, and we had Take That and a big show at the centre. And then the Spice Girls at Cofton Park, which was the first show they'd ever done to a crowd. Simon Fuller's it. He had them doing little clubs, like touring round as promotional stuff. And I remember thinking, John Probyn, who was the master of all this kind of stuff, eventually went to run Live Nation and all sorts of big events like that, which he still does. And they were just so nervous. I remember saying, I think he'd ever get on.
They were very young at that point.
Well, they were, and they appeared to be, as he says, he's speaking from the great height, tiny little girls, because they all had. But then when they got the shoes on, they all increased by about 5 inches.
I remember them well.
But they were really, really nervous. And then Kate, anyway, they got on. They lip sync the song. I can't remember whether they're actually singing words or not, but probably not. And it was, and it was fine. And interestingly, then they had Wannabe, and then it was, I don't know, number one in 10 countries or 11 countries or something. And, well, it wasn't me. Somebody approached Simon Fuller and said, do you think that the Spice Girls would do us an event, a charity event, the NEC? And he took notes and said, yes, of course. You gave it the first big event that they'd ever been on. Yeah. It's fine. Which I'd always had a lot of time buying both Spice Girls and him really for agreeing to do that. It was it was great.
So who was the most interesting person that you think, or the most interesting people that you've met through your time in radio?
Wow, that's a difficult question, isn't it? Well, you'd have to say the King, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes.
Because you think you have to start at the top and then work down. When he was Prince Charles. It's just, I think he was an interesting man. I was very involved with Walkathon in terms of the sort of event coverage, really. And we gave money to that was then the Prince's Trust. And I did an interview with him, and we were fortunate enough to go to what was then his home, St James Palace, Palace of St James, is that right, or whatever, which was very nice. And then they invited me. I was at a radio festival, radio conference, and over the tannoy came this voice. Would Mike Owen contact reception? I was having a chat to somebody. No. When Mike Owen contact reception, there's a call from Buckingham Palace. Of course, everybody went, yeah. And I thought, who's winding me up? Anyway, eventually I took this call, and this boy said, hello, is that Michael Owen? I said, yes. He said, this is the equerry to His Majesty, His Royal Highness, Prince of Wales, and I understand you're an announcer. I said, well, I've been called many things, but not an announcer. I said, oh, yes.
I'm very 40s, an announcer.
An announcer. Here is the announcer. And they said, we'd like you to, would you do the concert? Wait a minute, who is it? What are they called? Genesis. Have you heard of them? I said, well, just a bit, really. He said he wanted to announce the Genesis before their Royal Highnesses, Prince of Wales. Is that all right?
Oh, interesting.
I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then I kept thinking, is somebody,
someone in a phone box around the corner.
Yeah. But no, it was, and I did the announcing, as it were,
at St James's Palace.
No, at the NEC.
Oh, at
it was
NEC.
a concert at the NEC. It was a scheduled concert, and then Genesis agreed to do it for the Prince's Trust, but didn't tell anybody. So I had to go on stage at the NEC, like 16,000 or whatever it is, and say, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, you see those empty seats up there? They will be filled by their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales, Diana, of course." Right. And they'd give me instructions. I thought, I can't read these. And it said various things. I said, look, by the way, when sort of royalty turns up, you're expected to stand up. And somebody in the front said, you got no chance. So I said, well, anyway, that's
Feisty Midlanders.
Yes, that's the general idea. And I went off, and because they arrived and all the rest of it, and my cue was given, and I came on to do the announcement. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, their Royal Highness the Princess of Wales, and everybody stood up, apart from him, probably, maybe some others. So it was quite, because you are the voice of God when you at 16,000 people. And it was so I did one of those, and then I did Neil Diamond for both of them. So it was kind of
I mean, it's a fascinating career, isn't it? And I'd like to move on to the Worshipful Company, Smiths, but I'm aware of the fact that I could sit and listen to you for hours. So will you come in again?
Yeah, sure.
And talk to us some more about this, because I'm in radio and you have so much knowledge, so I want to pick your brains a bit.
Yeah, no problem.
So we met initially because we're both part of the Worshipful Company of Smiths, which the official title of which is, I have written this down, unless you know it off by heart, Mike.
The Worshipful Company of Smiths, is it something more than that?
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh, is it?
Absolutely.
Oh, Lord.
So the Worshipful Company of Smiths, smiths, goldsmiths, card makers and ironmongers, pewterers and braziers, plumbers, cutlers, nailers and spurriers of Lichfield.
Well,
and the Worshipful Company is back in the medieval period, there were lots of guilds in Lichfield. There were the big important religious guilds like the Guild of St Mary and St John, and there were trade guilds. And the Worshipful Company of Lichfield is a trade guild that has its roots right back in the Middle Ages.
Right.
And it has been continuing year in, year out, pretty much without break, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, there was a sort of a break between the end of the 19th century and the 19th. They were there, but they didn't do anything until it was resurrected. In the 1930s, 40s,
something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So there was a kind of a hiatus but there were these two people left. Holding the light, the lamp.
Absolutely, like carrying the torch forward.
That's right, yeah. And it was resurrected and has been operating ever since, so that's good.
And the Smiths is a guild for artisans, creatives, people involved in sort of creating any form of structure or art, really. So we've got engineers, haven't we? And
yes.
Garden designers and painters and sculptors and writers, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about what the Smiths does for the community?
Well, I think I guess the most active thing is the apprentice fund. I think that's true. I mean, I'm glad to say that the worshipful master now is much more involved in city activities, which is nice. So that gives us a kind of a profile thing. But the apprenticeship process, I mean, well, they should be involved in apprentices.
Absolutely. And with an artisan craft guild apprenticeships.
Quite. And having apprentices was an important part of the original guilds. What am I going to do when I'm not here anymore? I want somebody, whether it was my son or somebody creative or somebody that was good with their hands, I want them to take this skill on.
Yes.
So it's just terribly important. And I think we lost the track somewhere. Well, we did. When that sense that everybody has to go to university and maybe, that's, I think that was a mistake. But
yes, I did.
And we lost track of where apprenticeship was and how valuable it could be. So that's an active thing, and we know, anybody that's listening is an apprentice and they'd like some money. Well, what we do is we give funds to apprentices. It's really to support their apprenticeship.
Yeah.
The original idea was tools and that sort of thing. And I should say it's inspired by a woodworker. That's probably not the best way to describe Dennis Parsons, and it's the Dennis Parsons Foundation. And he was a very skilled, very inspired worker in wood. Some of his work is at the Lichfield Cathedral, one of the candle stands there. I've seen a model of it that his son actually brought into us. And so it's Dennis Parsons, and what I think when he died, he wanted to give money to an apprenticeship, and the Smiths, operate that and give out funds. So any apprentice in any industry is able to apply, except it has to be Lichfield and the Lichfield district, the Granda district, not just Lichfield city. But I constantly encouraging people to do it because they don't somehow. I don't know whether.
Possibly because the word hasn't gotten out as much. But yes, if you are an apprentice or you're going for an apprenticeship scheme, have a look online for the Worshipful Company of Smiths, and you'll find details on there of how to apply for funds. And this guild has been around since the medieval period, supporting apprentices and supporting masters and mistresses of their guild, of their craft. And it's by invitation, isn't it? You are invited to join the Worshipful Company of Smiths. And there is a feast every year, and there's a church service every year, and the feast is wonderful at the inauguration of the new Smiths.
Yes.
It's very Wolf Hall, isn't it? There's floppy sort of velvet caps and robes and wonderfulness, and a fabulous feast afterwards. And it's an absolute joy to be a member of the Smiths. And if you're ever asked, snap their hand off. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there is that connection with Lichfield, which I think is really, really important. And I would reach out to people who are new to Lichfield and who, might think, well, it's nothing to do with me. Well, it is something to do with you, and you may well qualify. And as you say, it's a broadest church we can get really now. Not just people working in their hands, who all are included, but also, other skills that require some creative input and
absolutely. So there's things such as marketing and publishing and all these kind of things, and radio, of course, as well.
Absolutely.
Very briefly, because we're coming towards the end of our time now. Right. As you know, there's a little bit of every interview when we ask people to bring the thing. Could I ask you, did you bring a thing?
Well, I did bring a thing, coincidentally. It's just a picture that I used at the back of my phone, and it's a picture. It was taken by the Birmingham Mail, because the story was in the Birmingham Mail. And it's me sitting at the back on my back porch with a very strange-looking cat to my to my right, to my right, to my left as I'm looking at it, to my right. We have cats. We've always had cats. And I wrote a book about cats.
I didn't know that.
It's set in Lichfield. And it's about a pandemic. Before the pandemic, I hasten to say.
Prescient.
Yeah. And I was due to go to publishers' meeting March the 16th or thereabouts, when lockdown set in.
Good Lord.
And we never fulfilled that meeting as such. So, it's published by Amazon, Kindle and all that sort of stuff. So it was a shame. Nonetheless, I thought I did want to do it, and it's there. It's really a sort of young people's book, really.
What's the title of your book?
It's called The 10th Life.
Lovely.
Meaning 9 lives of cats. This is one extra. 10th Life.
Lovely. So The 10th Life by Mike Owen.
Available on Amazon Kindle.
Wonderful.
Kindle Unlimited. You get it for nothing if you're clever. Oh, no. It's $7.99 in paperback.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Mike, it's been such a joy to have you in. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the studio again.
Indeed. Order for Smith's meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that's quite soon, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Well, then. And here.
Then.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.